try to make it every year. Certainly I want to go ahead and spend some time and talk to you a little bit about education, a little bit about my background, and then I'll leave it open for any easy questions that you might have. Just kidding, you can ask me any questions you want to, but certainly what I want to do is start off with a little bit of background. I'm from Laredo, oldest of 8 kids. My dad and mom went only to a 3rd and 6th grade education. In those days, they would take out the young kids like yourself to go work out in the field. So think about that. It was a different time. Imagine if they would, parents would take you out and say, you know, sorry about school, but we need to have you work out in the field. Think about the old days when our society was based more on the agriculture. That is what you were able to get out of the land. And of course, in the old days, the more hands you had, the more money you made, right? That's the capital-intensive part of agriculture. Things have changed now, in the sense that now it's more knowledge-based, and this is the society we live in, and this is why it's so important that you get a good education. My parents said, all of y'all are going to get an education because we were not able to get an education, and they instilled in us 2 things: how to work hard, and then number 2, the importance of education. And this is why I was here in school, graduated from high school here in Laredo, went off to Laredo Community College, transferred over to Georgetown in Washington, D.C., graduated from there. Then from there, got a law degree, then got a master from UT Austin, a master's from Texas A&M International, used to be called Laredo State University in the old days. And then later got a PhD from the University of Texas there in Austin. So you can see, to me, education was very, very important because my parents said, you know, education is the greatest equalizer that we have in our society. And the other thing is, what I learned from my parents is how to work hard. I mean, things just don't happen. Things do not happen. You got to work hard. You got to prepare. And what you're doing here in the high school is going to be important for you in college. It's going to be making sure you learn the basic foundations, learn how to read and write, learn the different things that you have to learn, and then go off to college. And then in the old days, college was enough, and if you get college, I'll be happy with that. But if you can go beyond that, get a graduate degree, whether it's a lawyer, doctor, or whatever, a graduate degree, that's even better. In the Hispanic population, and keep in mind Laredo is the most Hispanic city percentage-wise in the whole country, almost 96%. Percentage-wise, this is the most Hispanic city that we have in the country. But when you look at some of the dropout rates that we have in every school district, and every school is different, is you will see that true dropout rates, who goes in the 9th grade, who gets out in the 12th grade, you will see that for Anglo students, you will see about a 27% dropout rate. For African Americans, you will see a 34% dropout rate. For Hispanics, which is the fastest growing sector that we have, you will have a 49% dropout rate, which means that if this was indicative of a Hispanic classroom, half of y'all would drop out. So work with me on this little exercise. Half of y'all would drop out. And then, out of the ones that do graduate from high school, 51% will go into the workforce military, 49% will go into a 2-year or 4-year degree program. So work with me again, we lose another 51%. Keeping with me, right? We drop out 51%. Then, once you get into college, we also have dropouts. And 1 year of college is value added, I agree. 2 years is much better, and then on and on and on. The average graduation is, you know, every school is different. The better graduation rates that we have are the flagships that we have, UT Austin and A&M. Then after that, you have schools that vary on that. But let's say you have a 34% average graduation rate. 4 years of college, we measure in 6 years. Because, I mean, I'm used to say, hey, you do college, you do in 4 years on that, but we give it, for measurement purposes, we say 6 years, 4 years of college. Single parents, working parents, you know, gets a little different once you graduate from high school. And so if it's 34% will graduate, 34 students after out of 100 students at the end of 6 years for 4 years of college, than maybe one or two individuals here. That's it. That's the Hispanics in our society. So it's good to graduate. I mean, it's good to be growing, and Texas is growing very fast. The last 4 years of the last 10 years in the state of Texas, Texas grew by 4.3 million individuals. 65% of them were Hispanics. The problems we have sometimes within our community are two things. One, we don't graduate. Two, in the job that I'm in, we don't register and we don't vote. And I say this about registering and voting because that's very important. The only way we're going to get our communities moving is if you get involved, you put in the right school board trustees, the right legislators, both at the state, federal, and whatever positions, you got to get registered to vote. If you notice in the national level, there's been a debate on immigration reform. Why? Who can tell me why there's a debate on immigration reform? Why now? Some of us have been talking about it for a long time. Because this last November, President Obama against Mitt Romney, President Obama got 71% of the Hispanic vote. Democrats across the nation got 68% of the vote. So Mitt Romney and some of the other Republicans that were saying deport them and round them up, put them in buses and send them off, all of a sudden from one day to the other day they said, well, let's wait a moment. Let's go ahead and talk about immigration reform. That's why you have people like Marco Rubio and other folks that are talking about immigration reform, and that's because they realize the Hispanic population is growing very fast. They realize also that presidents like President Obama, Democrats get 70% or more. So therefore, they went from a self-deportation policy or position to immediately right after the November election to a let's talk about immigration reform. So people are noticing the Hispanic population, right? But again, if we don't help ourselves, nobody's going to do it. So you got to get a good education. Don't drop out of school. Go off to college. And once you're able to register to vote, you got to go vote. Your vote does make a difference. When I became congressman, I was running against a congressman. I was a candidate for U.S. Congress. It was San Antonio versus Laredo, basically. He was from San Antonio. I was over here. They had 285,000 people. We only had, at that time, Laredo was cut in half and redistricted. We only had 99,000 people. And then plus whatever other counties in between. We won 58%. I mean, I'm sorry, not 58%. 58 votes. I won by 58 votes. So does it matter that your parents or you later on vote? Yeah, it does make a difference. Otherwise, people would not voted here in the Laredo area. What would have happened? You would have had a congressman. I wouldn't be here. You would have had a congressman from San Antonio because they had a larger amount. But we were able to, on that primary, because in the primary Democrats vote more here in Laredo than in San Antonio, believe it or not, in that particular area, and that made a difference. So it does make a difference. Education and participation. Now, let's go into the issues that I think are important about education. Education, and I used to do the budget for both public and higher education. We made a lot of changes. In those days, 75 cents out of every new dollar that we had in Austin, we would put it into education. Now it's almost the reverse. There's different people there to the way it used to be. When we were there, we added money for construction. Some of the construction you have here is because of the state dollars that we added. We had teacher pay raises. We took care of the retirement. We did a lot of things. Now it's very different. In fact, when the federal government put in money to the state under the stimulus dollars that some of the other party didn't want, Texas complained and complained, but they sure took their $14.5 billion. And from there was supposed to be some money for education, but they put it in a rainy day fund. And therefore, monies that should have gone into education didn't come in. So why am I telling you this story? Remember what I said a while ago? Does it matter who's in office? Yes, it makes a difference. Just when I was coming in, one of your teachers was telling me, hey, can the federal government take over because we don't like what's happening in Austin? Well, we can't. We can't do that. I mean, we provide certain funding, but the funding comes in from Austin. The majority of the money comes in from Austin, and of course the local taxpayers, and then a small part from the federal government. So does it make a difference? Yes. Otherwise, y'all would have had a little bit more money if we would have done it the way we used to do it last time. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about education. The education part of it, a lot of it will come in from yourself. And I go back to it. It comes in. Your parents can help you, and parents are very, very important. Teachers are going to help you, and there's sometimes some parents that think that once they drop you off, it's the teacher's all responsibility. No. Parents have to be involved. Teachers do a great job, but they need the help from the parents. They need the help from the parents. But the third factor is yourself. You gotta make sure that you do your part. You gotta do your part. You have to do your part. You have to do your part. You gotta understand that education, it doesn't matter what background you come from, education is gonna make the big difference in your life. Who's going to college here? I'll ask you a question. Who's going to college here? I want to make sure I see all the hands here. I see some hands not going up. Because if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to ask you why you're not going to college. Military. All right, that's good. You go to the military, they offer you opportunities to go to school. They pay for your college. Right. We passed a bill called the new GI Bill. In the old days, the GI during World War II, when the soldiers went up there, they got out and they were able to pay, and there's probably some of the older teachers who are able to get an education because of the GI Bill. The new GI Bill that we passed a couple of years ago does the same, but it's more for the younger veterans who are coming in. Well, actually, it's after September 11, 2001, for those veterans after that. And what that would do is it'll give you the money to go to school, but there's a little difference. There's a little difference there also. Is that if you already have an education or the new GI Bill, you can give it to your spouse, or you can give that educational benefit to your children. So either use it, or you can use it later on for your kids later on, but start off with yourself first. So the military will pay for that, but again, join the military, but get the education. That's the most important thing, get the education, get the education. The other thing about going off to college is this. I know money's tight right now at universities and all that, but there are monies out there if you really, really, really look at it. I know when your school graduates, there's millions of dollars that you all have available. There are available. In Texas, I created the Texas Grant. Anybody familiar with the Texas Grant? If you're not familiar with the Texas Grant, you better get familiar with the Texas Grant. The Texas Grant is the largest scholarship that we have in Texas history. Then at the national level, we have the Pell Grant. Then, of course, there's loans if you don't qualify for those Pell Grants or the Texas Grant. And what we did at the national level is we got rid of the middle person when we give those federal loans. We now work directly through the university because, without due respect to my banker friends, they were getting money will be given, the banks will come in the middle, they would charge a higher interest, and they made money in between, and then who paid for the higher interest? Your parents. So we got rid of the middle person, we worked directly with the universities, and that interest rate, let's say from 6 to 3.5, as an example, will save your parents thousands and well, actually save you thousands and thousands of dollars. Those were some of the changes we made to make it affordable to go to college. So again, if you look for the money will be there. Or if not, do what I did. I had 2 part-time jobs when I was in college. I worked hard, I washed dishes, I did other things to make sure that I got the college education. Don't use money as an excuse. Don't use money as an excuse. Look for the money, if not, borrow the money, because the greatest investment that you'll make in your life is not buying a car, is not buying a house. What's the biggest investment, the best investment? The education. They can take away a car, they can take a house away, but they can never take the education away from you guys. They can never, 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 never take that. Now, let me give a side note to our young ladies. We all fall in love, right? So, when you're in high school and you think you're falling in love and all that, say, well, look, I'm not going to go to college because I'm going to fall in love with somebody here. He's going to take care of me. Please, fall in love if we want to. That's, we all do that as human beings. But get your education. Don't depend on somebody else. Don't depend on that person that's going to be with you for the rest of your life. What you need to do is what? Get your education, get married later on, but please do not depend on anybody. Get your education yourself. Just a little side note to young ladies here. It's very, very important that you get your education and don't depend on anybody. So, I will close up because I'd rather leave it open for any questions that you might have. Just a couple of things. One, make sure you put education as your number one goal, that is wherever you want to go. Number two, short-term goals. Depending what you want to do, set your long-term goals, but set your short-term goals. Otherwise, you're never going to get to those long-term goals. So make sure you do that. Finally, the other thing is there's a lot of help out there. All you have to do is ask for it. Some of it you can find it online. There's a lot of things you can find online. But the other thing is, what's important that you understand that there's folks that are up there to help you. Your teachers, your librarians, your parents, other counselors, other folks who are out there that are available to help. If you want to learn about college and other things, there's a whole bunch of websites. There's Dr. Rick Moreno at the TAMU, I don't know if you know, with Gear. He gave me a one-pager the other day. That one-pager has all the different links where you can find information and find scholarships and find assistance. And one of the ones that we created when I was in there, I think it's still working, collegefortexans.com. Collegefortexans.com. I used to have the number memorized, the toll-free number, but they'll help you find that. But again, there's a lot of information out there. Don't use things as an excuse. Set your mind what you're going to do. Go ahead and go for it. Look at myself, and I know a lot of your teachers and parents went through the same thing. They were not, they didn't have the resources, but they had the determination to make a difference, and you can do it yourself. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. I can go on, but I'd rather leave it open for questions. One at a time. Can't see all the hands at one time. Yes, sir.
How much is the Texas grant?
It depends. The Texas grant will pay pretty much for your tuition. It won't pay for room and board, at least I don't think it does, but pretty much pays for your tuition. Unless if you go to a private university, they might pay a little bit less than that, but they do a little adjustment to that.
And the national one was called what?
I'm sorry?
The national grant was called what?
Pell. P-E-L-L.
No one pays for your full tuition?
Pretty much. But we have a big debate up there in Washington. The debate is the deficit, and that's the big debate that we're looking at. Right now, there are some people that feel that we ought to cut certain things and not cut everything. Some people don't want to touch the military, but they want to cut the rest, and the rest means education like Pell Grants and other things like that. So, I think we ought to reduce the deficit, but we have to be very careful as to what things we ought to cut and preserve. And to me, education is something that we ought to support. Well, by the way, when we were looking at the Texas grant and studying, one of the things that we saw why some students don't go to college or take a long time to finish, and then if they take a long time, they get discouraged and all that, was financial aid. And that's why, to me, financial aid is very important to make sure that you have the assistance to go off to college. collegefortexans.com will give you that information on Texas grant. Not bad, right? Texas grant got started with somebody from Maria. Largest scholarship in Texas history. Yes. I'm sorry? Why am I like a congressman? Okay. Many years ago, somebody asked me the same question when I was a state rep. As you know, I was a state representative. To me, it's very simple. I use this analogy. You live in a home. You live there. You see windows broken. You're going to fix the windows. You see the fences, you know, the fence broken, you want to fix that. The front door is a little broken, you want to fix that. It's your home. You want to take care of the home where your family's going to live. To me, it's the same thing, the community I live in. I want to do as much as I can to help my community be where it's at. And you've seen a couple things that we've done when we were state rep. The UT Health Science Center. We got the first monies for the South Texas, for the LCC South Campus, TAMIU, the DPS building, the Laredo State Center, that we have mental health over there, the transportation building here, many things. Money for the airport, millions of dollars on that. So, Texas grant, things so we can improve our society. Other questions? You are too quiet. They told me this is a very talkative group. Maybe it's a little early on a Monday morning. If you don't ask me questions, I'll use what we learned in law school, the Socratic method. Anybody know what the Socratic method is? Socrates, he had a way of teaching, and what he would do is, this is the answer I want, so I'm going to ask you questions and questions till I get to the answer so you can understand that. So either you ask me questions or I use the Socratic method on you. Let me go over here. Gun control. I'm a believer of the Second Amendment. And I think when we look at guns, or let me start again. When we look at the violence, we got to look at all sources of why there's violence. Why do we have violence out there in our society? And part of it, one is mental illness. I mean, you look at the people that are killed, what's the common thing that we see up there?
They're not sane.
Yeah, they got a little problem. So that's one. So some people look at one part, but I think we need to look at the overall picture is why do people get out there? In Texas, many years ago, we passed a concealed handgun. I was there when I was there. A lot of people say, oh, it's going to become the Wild Wild West. It has become that on that thing. So, Second Amendment, number one, we got to look at the other sources of why we have violence in our society. How's Washington? It's cold in the winter. I miss this weather, except in December it gets a little hot here. The last time talking about Laredo weather, it's so hot here. First time I went to Iraq years ago as a member of Congress, they said, oh, you got to be careful. It's so hot here, and it's this and this and this and this. Drink a lot of water. I remember getting off the plane for the first time, just almost like Laredo weather. It's a little hotter over there. It gets to about 120. And over there, there's more sand in your face. That place, but warm weather here, Laredo. Okay. All right. I'm only getting sane persons. If you don't mind, let me see. If not, I'll go back to you. Come on, guys. Socratic method. Socratic method. I'm going to look at somebody who's looking at me. I'll look at you. I'm just kidding. I do have an office here. If you want to volunteer and get a little bit of resume building on your resume, you can volunteer here in my office here. We're at 602 East Colton. I know that sometimes we get, I guess there are more, I think we've had one or two high school students, but it's more college, and we get them to volunteer up there, pay them a little bit of money in Washington, D.C. in the summertime. So there are some opportunities. You work there, you get to see the White House, you go out and see the Supreme Court building and the Library of Congress and all that. So when you get a little older, talk to your parents, talk to your school folks, and let me know. Now, I guess I'm going to start using the Socratic method. All right. 1, 2, 3. Notice the teacher who's asking the questions here. All right. Yes. Biggest accomplishment as a congressman, I guess. That's a good question. I thought about that. I can tell you what I did as a state rep. No, I think as a congressman, we've been able to bring a lot of money into, my big thing is always bring the resources to Laredo. We got in monies for, when I was traveling over here, the loop, that overpass, that was mainly federal dollars. The extension that we did all the way down over there, that also was mainly federal dollars. The airport, we've added over $100 million there. The Jefferson water plant is another thing that we had. We added a lot more federal officials to be here in Laredo, a lot more. Those federal officials get, one is to provide security, but at the same time they get paid pretty good dollars. And when they get pretty good dollars, what happens? They spend the money here locally. There's more money in the economy. Also, there's 2 new female Hispanic qualified judges, federal judges. The last time we had somebody from Laredo to be a federal judge was back in 1979 when George Kazin was appointed by Jimmy Carter. If you look at the other federal judges that we've had, they've been from out of town. And my thing is, don't we have qualified attorneys here in Laredo to be federal judges? So we got 2 judges from this area that are now federal judges from this area. That was something as an attorney that I felt very strongly about to make sure that we get folks in that. Monies, we put in a lot of monies for our schools when we did the stimulus dollars. The stimulus dollars, monies came in, millions of dollars came to UISD, LISD. I know that special education school that they established up there at UISD was all federal dollars, so there's a lot of things that come in. So my thing is to represent you not only on voting up there, but also for me is bringing the federal dollars down over here. The other thing that I did that you won't notice, but to me it's very important, people didn't notice, is that I passed a legislation, passed a bill that did changes to the 1993 law that Bill Clinton had on government, how government works and how do we make it, because the federal government is sometimes not very responsive on how it spends the dollars. So we went ahead and modernized the 1993 law, and to me that was something very important because I did that. I added most of the changes in Austin when it came. We call it performance-based budgeting, results-oriented government. The media doesn't pick it up, but it's very important how we run government so we can get the best bang for the dollar itself. The other day, in January, the president signed another bill called the Jaime Zapata bill. It was, in the honor of the ICE agent that got killed in Mexico, but it was also asking the federal, state, local law enforcement to work together as we look at border security itself. So those are some of the things that I worked on. At the state level, TEMU, UTL Science Center, Laredo Mental Health, the transportation, the new DPS building, but the most important to me were 2 things. One, we established the first CHIP program in Laredo. In the state, the HALA program became the statewide program, the CHIP, Children Health Insurance Program. But to me, the main thing was the Texas grant, because that has literally helped thousands of kids here in Laredo and across to get an education, the Texas grant. To me, that's been probably the biggest thing I did. All right, what are the questions besides this 2, 3 individuals? Yes, ma'am.
Who would you consider to be your role model growing up?
Mom, Dad. My parents didn't, like I mentioned, didn't have the resources. And they wanted to go to school, but they were taken out to go work in Las Piscas. And you can tell they wanted it. I mean, they told me they wanted to go to school, but they were taken out. So they had 8 kids. They used to be migrant workers. My father used to do, he was a migrant worker, but then he became a gardener. And taken me to do gardens up there. And the old days, you didn't have those electric things. Everything was done, those machines, I don't know if the older folks remember, used to cut the edges with the machine. They used to have strong forearms by doing that on that. But my parents worked very hard to take care of 8 kids. So, when you have, I got 2 kids, and I don't know how many kids some of y'all have, but to have 8 kids, that's a lot. That's very impressive. And I think all of us turn out pretty well. Yes.
Would you ever run for president?
Well, right now, I'm just happy doing a good job, I say. I was asked, I haven't said this publicly, and it stays here. They did ask me to look at a cabinet position. I like being where I'm at. All right. Any other questions?
How's your education in Georgetown?
Georgetown is a good school that really pushed you. The kids that go there are kids that come in from some of the best schools, prep schools in the nation. And I went in and I knew that I had to work harder. I learned everything about time management. I used to sleep almost like 4 hours a day. Studied. Even when I went to class, I would have a one-pager studying, because I felt that if you studied those 5 minutes, those were extra 5 minutes that you had. I had 2 part-time jobs, so it was very hard. I graduated summa cum laude, or cum laude, should I say, there with a 3.6 degree from Georgetown. As you know, that's a tough school to graduate with that. So I knew that I had to work harder than other people. So I used to say, when they're asleep, I'm studying. When they're asleep, I'm up and I'm studying. When I'm walking from class to class, I'm studying. And I learned about time management, a lot about time management, and learning that if you didn't have that foundation, that you would have to work harder. And that's where my desire about getting a good education from my parents and working hard really helped me at Georgetown University.
What do you think about Obamacare?
About what?
Obamacare.
It is probably the best thing we could have done for an area like Laredo and other places. The healthcare, this is where it is. If you're poor, you get some help called Medicaid. If you're a government employee like a teacher or whatever, the school provides you healthcare. If you're rich, you don't have to worry about it. Life is good. You can get anything you want to, including healthcare. But there are some people that work and make enough money to pay their bills, to buy food for their kids and all that, and those folks don't have the health care to do it. In Laredo, ages 18 to 64, 18 because you got CHIP, and then 64 to about 65 get the Medicare for the seniors. 51% of the working people here in Laredo didn't have insurance. Now, the health care that we voted, and I had some people in the Laredo area that are well off and were saying, you can't do this, you have to vote no, you have to know, and basically my opinion was, I'm doing it for my district. Now, the bill should be changed. There are some good things, there's some things that we need to modify. The problem in Washington is that the Republicans want to repeal the whole thing, which is wrong. The Democrats don't want to touch anything on it, which is wrong. And I think like any legislation, when you pass something, you fine-tune it and you make some changes. And hopefully, once we get this motion, we'll get it done on that. So healthcare is going to help a lot on that. And this will give you a little hint that if you have more people with insurance, what's going to happen? There's going to be more need. Hospitals, doctors, the healthcare, there will be a lot of need in the healthcare. So if you want to look at one field that will do well, is the healthcare field. And in fact, if you look at the numbers, a lot of the jobs have been created in the United States lately have been where? In the healthcare. In the healthcare. In the healthcare, whether it's nurse, PAs, physician assistants, doctors, whatever the case might be, the healthcare law. But it's going to help a lot in my area. My congressional district, 35% of the people there were without any care, 35%. I think I was like number 10th or number 11th of all the 435 congressional districts. I had the 10th most uninsured district in the area. Now there was a lot of misinformation. The other side did a great job. It literally did a good job at putting all this misinformation out there. Did a heck of a job at putting misinformation on that. One first thing they did, they called it Obamacare. It's not Obamacare. It's something that we passed, but they know that Obama in many places is not very popular, so what do they call it? Obamacare. Why? Because they tie in to what some people see as a negative to that care, and that's what they do on that. So remember, and I heard a lot of people tell those people, go get a job, get a job. No. The poor are taken care of by Medicaid. The rich have their own insurance. It was those people in the middle that are working, but they cannot afford it. They make enough money, but they don't have enough money to buy the insurance on that. All right, what other questions? One last question.
What future plans do you have?
Well, I'll be here this week in Laredo. If you're talking about politically, I will be here for a while and do my good job as a congressman. We'll see.
What did you think about Obama's State of the Union address?
It was, in many ways, it was Clinton-like, in many ways. One of the things he said, I don't know if you noticed, we don't need bigger government, we need smarter government. I always say that's using some of my terms. And then he gave a list of things, we need to do this, we need to do this and this. That's the way Clinton would do it on that. Anytime you have a speech like that, you have two parties out there, you have the Democrats and Republicans, of course the Republicans and then the Democrats, yes. Did I agree with everything? No. But I certainly agree with many of the things that the president said. We'll be working with him on that. But it's interesting, he won re-election, but in the Congress, the other side don't want him to get a lot of credit. For example, let me tell you what happened. A couple of days ago, there was a leaked story, I think it was US Today, that talked about the immigration plan that Obama had. If you look at the summary form, what Obama was talking about, it's the same thing that the bipartisan group of Marco Rubio and other folks, Schumer and other folks put together. It was almost the same thing, but they said, oh, his plan is going to be dead. Why? Because they wanted to, they want Congress to do it and not the president. But if you look at it, in many ways, it's going to be exactly the same. I mean, every immigration plan should have three things. One, you should have border security. Two, you should have a guest worker plan. Three, you should have a plan to do, what do you do about the 11, 12 million undocumented aliens? Every plan will basically they'll have other things. You wait 80 years before somebody becomes a citizen. Do you have amnesty like President Reagan did in 1986? No, I don't approve of amnesty. My father was a legal resident and became a naturalized citizen. I think we ought to let people go in, and then whoever we're getting those 11 or 12, they go at the end of the line, let those people have been doing it the right way on that. But you still got to do something about the 11 or 12 million undocumented aliens. And keep in mind the 11 or 12 million undocumented aliens that we have here. And I know we got some dreamers. You know what I mean by dreamers, right? Kids, dreamers are the kids that are here. The parents brought them over here, but they're not here legally. I know we got some of you, I know that for a fact. Well, I shouldn't say that, but my understanding. So you have, different ways of handling the different parts of the program itself. Border security, guest worker plan, and all that. But keep in mind that out of 11 to 12 million undocumented aliens, 40% of them came in through a legal permit or visa, student visa, work visa, whatever, and they stayed over. So you can put the biggest wall in the whole world over here on the border. It doesn't matter because some of them are going to come in through a legal permit. 40% of them came in that way. And those are the things we got to keep in mind. Back in when I first started as a congressman, we were talking about Bush. Bush was good on immigration. He really was. He wanted to, but he couldn't get his Republican friends to support it. If you recall, at that time they were talking about border security, border security, border security. on that. And if you look at it, we have the lowest crossing of people coming in 40 years. In fact, if you look at the Pew report, there's more Mexicanos going back than going in right now. And the other thing is, we have the largest amount of Border Patrol. Out of the 21,000 plus Border Patrol in the nation, 18,500 of them are the southwest border. Now, can we do more for border security? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. But there are some people that they'll say, well, we're not going to talk about the other part of immigration reform until we do what? Border security. They keep moving the goalposts over and over and over again. We just got to do it correctly. We got to do it correctly. What do I think we can do to do the deficit? First of all, problem is this, very simple. $3.7 trillion is what we spend a year. 3.7 roughly, maybe a little bit less. The income coming in, taxes, fees and all that is 2.7. A little bit less, give or take a little bit more. All right? So the difference is what? That $1 trillion there on that, right? So, first thing you would say, and I had some people, you know what, Congressman, just cut everything down to where expenditures meet the revenues, right? But if I did that, my job in Congress would be very simple because I would just be taking care of your Social Security, Medicare, the entitlements, that's it. No money for education, not a single penny for education. No money for the military, no money for transportation, no money for border security. That's it. That would be my job if we went down from the 3.7 to 2.7. So we've taken some steps. In fact, we already cut $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years. So we're in the process. The deficit that we saw, remember, the debt is one thing. The debt is the amount of money that's been accumulated. The payments. The deficit is the difference, the 3.7 to 2.7. That's the deficit every year, the difference. The deficit we had this last year was the lowest since 2008. Who was there in 2008? You got elected in 2008. November of 2000. Who was there in 2008? Bush. And keep in mind that when President Clinton was there, we had a surplus. And if we would have kept that surplus, we wouldn't even be talking about this right now. We had a surplus. You know what a surplus means? Instead of that deficit, that 3.7 to 2, we had a surplus. A couple things happened in 2001 when it was all control. Again, don't mean to get to my Republican friends. Don't mean to get on that, but I'm just giving you the facts. A couple things happened in 2001. At that time, the House and the Senate and the President was controlled by Republicans. Right after Clinton. A couple of things happened. We started 2 wars, right? Those wars are very expensive. Not only the men and women that we've lost, but wars are very expensive. We've spent over $1.2 trillion on just the wars itself in the last 10 years. I've always said that if you want to finish a war quicker, pay for it cash. Pay for it cash, I tell you those wars will finish very, very quickly. But anyway, we started 2 wars. The Medicare Part D, which is the prescription program that the President Bush wanted, that was all put on credit card. So the war was put on credit card and the other thing. Then taxes. 2001 and 2003, we just dealt with them there. Nobody likes to pay taxes, right? Everybody wants low taxes. But those taxes in 2001 and 2003, what happened? It cut the revenues. So you cut the revenues coming in, you add the wars and the Part D and a couple of things, and then what happens? So instead of having a surplus like this, you go into the deficit, and then they started adding in. And I remember being at a Chamber of Commerce event in Dallas, Texas. There was a Republican, and I won't mention his name, he's a good friend, somebody heard his name. And the Chamber, somebody asked me there in Dallas, hey, you know, remember it was back in 2005 2005, 2006, and they said, remember, the Republicans were in charge there, and then Bush was there, and they said, you know, we got a deficit, you know, we should start reducing the deficit. And I said, as a blue dog, which is a conservative Democrat, I agree with him. The Republican got up there and said, deficits are good. Deficits keep the economy moving and all that. And then you could see the audience there. These are conservative business people. They said, well, hold on. Who's a Democrat and who's a Republican out there on that? So what happened was that it went on during the Bush administration. Obama came in, and also what? The deficit becomes the issue on that. But yeah, we need to cut it. And we have cut it. We have cut it already. The only thing is people will say, cut, but don't cut my program, cut somewhere else. I had some very conservative people that came in from my district about a year ago. They said, Congressman, we got to reduce the deficit. You got to cut, you got to do this. And yeah, we're going to start off with the ag programs. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We weren't talking about ourselves. You need to cut school nutrition. So you got to cut, because the Farm Bill has what? Money for the farmers, and the school lunches that you have, that's part of the Farm Bill. So they were saying, cut that one, but don't cut us. See what I mean? It's everybody says, reduce the deficit, don't cut me, don't cut us. I mean, without due respect, if I ask my teachers here, they'll say, look at education, cut somewhere else. You talk to the military, the soldiers, they'll say, don't cut us, cut somewhere else. By the way, 2/3 of all the money we spend is in the entitlements. Social Security and Medicare, 2/3 of it. You add the military to that, the only thing left in discretionary funding, non-military discretionary funding, education, transportation, is 17% of the whole federal budget. Now you tell me, can you balance a budget on just the discretionary part? And that's what some people want us to do. Cut education, transportation, all that. You can't balance a budget on the non-military discretion. There's 17%, 15 to 17%. But that's what some people are saying we ought to do. So everybody's saying, don't touch my program, you know, cut somewhere else. But I'm one of those that, and I'll say this, I know it's a little sensitive, but I'll say it. Eventually, we're going to talk about Social Security and Medicare. I know that, you know, my parents are on Social Security and Medicare. It's very sensitive. I understand how important it is, but we got to make some changes. Because if 2/3 of the budget is in the entitlements, how are we going to address it? The 2/3 of it, the entitlements are automatic. You know what that means? I'm in the House Appropriations Committee. It's the committee to be in that handles the whole federal budget. But 2/3 of our budget is on automatic. Social Security, Medicare, automatic. It used to be 35%, and now it's up to 2/3. And it keeps going, what's going to happen? We'll go to 70%, and then 75%, and the whole thing. If we don't make some changes, politically, it's very sensitive. Very sensitive. Why? Honestly, why? Because older people vote better than you do, or if you're a registered voter. Older people vote better, vote more often, more frequent than younger people. Now, if the younger people, I would assume, came out and voted, you would see more of those other public officials putting more money in education. But they would. If you look at the reality, you look at the people that come out to vote here in Laredo. By the way, well, what was the turnout last time? 40,000 out of 100,000? 40% voted, which is high. One of the better ones we have. I think maybe it was a little bit more, 45,000, whatever. We still don't have a lot of people coming in. And a lot of it is young. Don't come when you're able to register to vote. That's the reality in Washington and in Austin. That's what I said. Get a good education, register to vote, and vote. It really makes a difference. All right, time's up. I want to say thank you. Thank you for your question. 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 Next time, I'll use the Socratic method if I'm with you sometime again. So again, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank the UISD. They do a heck of a job. The folks here and of course here at United South, I really appreciate all the work that y'all do. It's a hard job. I know this test. Remember, they're done at the state level, not at the federal level. We make sure that. Well, actually, we do make some things at the federal level, which is wrong. let me go. Leave no child behind. You might not understand, but this is a message for our teachers and all that. Leave no child behind. There's a couple things wrong. One, we need to put more funding. Two, we need to realign some changes. For example, there's issues with special ed students, limited English students, understand that. And the other thing on the instruments that are used to measure how they do, sometimes schools do good under the state, but not under the federal. The problem is they're not aligned. I think we need to have them aligned, so, because you can't do good here and not do it at the federal. You got to do, if you do good at the state, then your grades should be good at the federal level. And those are the things that we need to do. But the problem is, not too many things are passing in Washington, D.C. We have a very frustrating time up there in Washington where some people are saying, no, no. How about this? No, 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 no. And we got a lot of work to do, but we need the other side to work with us on that stuff. Again, I want to thank you very much for allowing me here. Appreciate UID, appreciate all the teachers and all the librarians and all the folks that are working very hard. Remember, your parents are very important. They got to support our educators. But the most important person is who? You. You're in the middle. You're in the middle of the universe on this educational universe that we have. Thank you. And God bless.